everyone, welcome back. So as I have been trying to get familiar with my local plants, I wanted to talk about connecting with plant spirits and allies. So since I have relocated, I am getting familiar with my local plants, and I thought that this would be a good opportunity to have the conversation about connecting with plant allies. Everyone's approach is going to be different, and so I thought I would offer my personal approach and see if it resonates with you, and perhaps you find some inspiration in this video and incorporate it into your own craft. A plant ally is a plant that you connect with spiritually and create a relationship with it medicinally and magically. Now, you don't have to use the plant ally medicinally if you do not want to. You may just decide to have the relationship with the plant for magical purposes only. If you do intend to incorporate a plant ally for any medicinal usage, just make sure you further your research. So who are our plant allies? I like to view our plant allies as any local plants that we have within our local area and in our community. Now, a plant ally can also be a plant that you connect with when you are out of town, and it is one that perhaps has always keen your interest. So it doesn't always have to be a plant within your community, but I've personally found that the best plant allies are those that I can visit often and continue to build that relationship with over time. When I say plants, I'm talking about trees, flowers, herbs, anything under that realm. So the first thing that I will do when it comes to connecting with a plant ally is to identify the local plant. Because I just relocated into an entirely new area of the country, there are so many new plants that I'm not familiar with. I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and there's clearly going to be different plants that are available to me on the Pacific Northwest. One of the tools that I personally like to use when it comes to identifying plants is PictureThis. It is a free app, but there is a purchase option and a membership, which I think is a monthly membership that you can purchase, or maybe it's yearly. I personally have never needed to use that. The free version gives me all of the information that I need to move forward onto my laptop and to further my research. For the most part, it's been about 95% accurate when it comes to identifying plants, but I always like to double check just to make sure. So gaining the knowledge of the actual medicinal name of the plant, this is how you can further your research online if you were intending to use it medicinally, and also just to research it within folklore as well. The next thing I like to do is to connect with it, spend some time with it. I don't necessarily forage this plant right away. I will visit it often before I decide to do that. By doing this, I'm able to kind of get familiar with its surroundings, what other plants are nearby, where do I see it growing the most. And if I'm visiting the plant frequently, I will make sure to touch it, feel it, and say hello, and just kind of build that relationship. It's kind of like meeting someone new, like you're getting acquainted, you say, hey, how's it going? And then you go about your day. Once I visit the plant a couple of times, then I will move forward into inviting it over to my house. And then this is when I decide to forage. Be sure to check your local community when it comes to foraging plants, especially if there's any endangered species that you are connecting with. Just make sure that you are careful and double check the laws within your area. Also, when it comes to foraging, don't take more than you need. Just save some for the insects and other pollinators that benefit from this plant. When I decide to forage the plant, I am wanting to connect with it on a deeper level, and so I will have it on my altar space for some time. And this is when I move into the next step of meditating with it. Not everybody does this. This is just my personal approach of how I decide to connect with my plant allies, but this is how I essentially create my own correspondences. So I will spend some time with the plant, meditating with it, and just kind of being super open-minded to what comes to mind when I'm holding this plant. A lot of the times I will have something specific come to mind, or a specific feeling that comes to mind, just like a certain sort of sensation that goes through my body. And a lot of the times this is a great communication between you and the plant of perhaps there are some ways that it wants to be used, or whether that be medicinally or magically. It's really helpful to keep an open mind because you just never know what's going to come up for you, and it might surprise you. A lot of the times this is when I feel an urge to do something specific with this plant, whether it's a spell or maybe it's something medicinally, whether it's infusing it in an oil or maybe making it out of a tea. A lot of the times this is how the spirit communicates with me, and I have just become familiar with what that sensation representation feels like, that little like spark within my mind of like, oh, I want to do this with this plant. So from there, I will move forward into whatever it is that I was inspired to do, whether that is creating a salve, creating a tea blend, or doing a spell. This is when taking notes is really important, especially when you're just getting familiar with a new plant ally. I will journal when I first encountered the plant, where I encountered it, and at the times that I have visited, as well as any sort of like drawings or just like physical representation of the plant. This is kind of like a plant identification like page within my own book that I like to keep. I can always reference back to it if I need to. This is also where I will store any spells or recipes that I use with the plant ally. So if I decide to make a tea blend out of it and it worked really well, I will then incorporate it into my book. Understanding the success of your spells because of a new plant ally is really helpful too, and that also furthers your understanding and the relationship that you have with this particular plant, as well as your own personal correspondences. So if you choose a plant and do a money working and you find that you got an abundance of income come in that wasn't necessarily expected, then you know that perhaps that particular herb was really good in aiding you in achieving that money goal. Books are really helpful when it comes to correspondences. You may have heard of the most popular one, which is Scott Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs. There are other books that I highly recommend. There's one that I'm currently reading about the folk traditions of the witch's cabinet, and so really reading about some plants that are tied to the witch with throughout folk traditions. The Witch's Cabinet, Plant Lore, Sorcery, and Folk Tradition by Corinne Boyer. This is a really great book. So far, I haven't finished it yet. So reading the folklore of a particular plant can really inspire us to gain a better understanding of the history of that particular plant and how it was viewed in the community. This can also inspire us to create our own correspondences and how we decide to incorporate that plant within our magical workings. It's also a really great way to understand how perhaps plants were used medicinally in other traditions. Also, make sure that you're not foraging or harvesting a plant that is endangered and perhaps even closed in other practices. And that is how I get familiar with my plant allies. There have been some plant allies that I've been working with for a really long time that have been readily available to me, most commonly found in my kitchen cabinet. So I have rosemary, thyme, basil, lavender, and rose. These are all plants that I feel comfortable working with, whether it is in magical workings or medicinally, and also within my kitchen craft. Now that I have moved into an entirely different part of the country, I've been trying to get familiar with the local plants that are available throughout the seasons. A great source that has helped me through this process is just researching native plants within the area when they're available and some foraging techniques. These books can often be found online. I like to use Scribed. It is a $10 a month membership. This isn't sponsored, I just think it's a really great, useful tool, especially for those who are not able to purchase a lot of books. I will say right now, one plant in particular that I have been getting acquainted with is yarrow. And I am so excited that I stumbled upon so much yarrow along the greenway that I walk. Yarrow is a great plant ally to have, and we are getting acquainted. I haven't made anything with it yet, but I found that yarrow is available on like white with white flowers, and they also have like pink variation colors as well. So the entire plant can be used. The stems can be used, the leaves, the flowers. I found that a lot of other herbalists and practitioners use this plant specifically for its healing properties because it's really great for healing any wounds. So I intend to infuse this to make a healing salve. My husband and I are always like hurting ourselves in the kitchen by accident, so I think that it'll something that really will benefit my family. I foraged some for the first time this morning actually on my walk, and so I have it on my altar right now to kind of introduce it into the space and also just to further my research of some recipes that I want to try out. Another plant that I've stumbled across but I haven't foraged yet is wild roses. It's been pretty surprising to me how many roses, like wild roses, are around. And of course they're so beautiful, so like a part of me doesn't want to forage them because I just want them to thrive in their natural habitat. But I do intend to gather some whenever I come across them again, just to make some rose water, because I think that rose water is really great for the skin. Also really great when it comes to baking. And you know me, anything when it comes to potion crafting, I am all in. Speaking of potion crafting, I do intend to reopen Full Craft Goods in a few weeks. There is some administration work that I am trying to get done before I reopen because I just want to make sure that the shop is in good standing before I reopen. There are some other products that are in the works, like 2 new potions, which I just tested one of them yesterday and is probably one of my favorite ones. I'm still just kind of like adjusting the recipe just a little bit, trying to compare 2 recipes together to decide which one I like more. But I've had them both in my coffee and it's so good and I'm so excited for you all to try it. There's another potion that I intend to try this weekend. I just need to get one ingredient that for whatever reason I'm having difficulty finding. But I do intend to open at least like hopefully by the end of the month, but I will be sure to keep you all posted. I'm also in the works of a new product when it comes to full craft goods and I'm really excited to further announce that when it's ready. This in particular has been a big dream of mine and so I'm really excited, but obviously there's that fear to make sure it's absolutely perfect before you announce it to the world. Eventually I just need to like rip the band-aid off and just do it, but there's some design elements that are just being finalized and so whenever that's done I will be sure to obviously let you all know because it's going to be really exciting. If you're not familiar with what Full Craft Goods is, it is my small business of intention coffee syrups, but the syrups can be used not only in coffee, you can use them in tea, you can also use them in baked goods. I've had people even tell me that they use them in sparkling water to add some like additional flavor. People are getting really creative with these syrups and I love to see it. But in the meantime, I do hope that this video inspired how you go about connecting with your plants and also creating that relationship to the plant spirits. Thank you as always for joining me and I'll see you in the next one.